How bad is the employment picture in Hong Kong?
Well, keep in mind that, of course, Hong Kong, relatively speaking, on a global basis, has relatively few cases of the coronavirus, just over 1,000 cases and 4 deaths. But on top of the 6-7 months of protests and also the U.S.-China trade war, the jobs picture in Hong Kong is looking fairly bleak. We have the headline number of 4.2%, which is more than the consensus estimate we were expecting for March of 4%. But the outlook looks even more grim. Bloomberg Economics saying the jobless rate could hit 5% by mid-year, and that, even by their own estimation, is a very optimistic outlook. Keep in mind, in the months following the peak of the SARS outbreak in 2003, in June of that year, we had 8.5% unemployment. And that's where we're getting some of these subsectors in that range. Construction unemployment reaching 8.5% in March. Consumption and tourism-related sectors continued its jobless surge to 6.8%. And if you break that out, food and beverage, because all those restaurants and bars, they've been forced upon them with social distancing rules, that unemployment rate has risen to 8.6%. And of course, at the ports and the airports, with so much traffic and passenger numbers down, trade and logistics sector, that makes up 18.6% of Hong Kong's jobs. Well, their unemployment rate is also higher. And that's another reason why we're seeing Fitch downgrading Hong Kong as an issuer of long-term foreign currency debt rating. Basically, the city is facing a second major shock, they say, from this virus after that prolonged period of social unrest last year.
And Steve, we saw 15 prominent democracy protesters being arrested over the weekend. What's the mood like right now when it comes to potentially more protests after the outbreak is over?
Well, that's one concern that the society has, is that there could be an escalation after a relatively quiet period, of course, through the coronavirus and the social lockdown, if you will, or the social distancing rules, that it could resurrect as Hong Kong opens up. But keep in mind, September is expected to see the Legislative Council elections, and there must be concern in Beijing that the opposition pan-democrats could soundly beat the pro-establishment candidates, much like they did in the district council elections last fall, where they won 85% of those seats. So we've seen harder line appointments by Beijing to both the local liaison office, also the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs office. We've seen the subsequent recent sharper edicts coming from both of those offices. We've also then, of course, on Saturday had the arrest of 15 prominent pro-democracy advocates, perhaps intended to send a message. So it's potentially setting up for another summer of discontent as well, as we approach a number of anniversaries, if you will, of last year's protests that ravaged the city.